Welcome to Cloud City After Dark, a Star Wars podcast brought to you by TV8MyDinner.com.
Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars. We know Star Wars. Star Wars.
You're listening to Cloud City After Dark. My name is Sean, and I'm here with Andrew.
Hello.
Bringing you the smooth sounds of Star Wars here. This episode is recorded prior to the release of
less than 24 hours.
Yeah, you will hear it afterwards, but we wanted to capture our last minute thoughts before the magic happened. In 24 hours, Andrew and I will have both seen the film. So this is our last chance to get in any kind of predictions and expectations so that we can compare them. This is our baseline show.
How are you? Yeah, how are you doing on the? Because I'm pretty good as I've gotten to be an adult. You handle excitement, and what it usually means is that I'm really excited. Like, oh, it's gonna be great. It's cool. I'm excited. Yeah. And then it gets into about a week of it. Like once the premiere happens for any movie I'm excited about, I'm like, oh, it's here. It's coming. Now I'm excited. And I watched that premiere on Saturday, just some of it. I was doing other stuff. And then John Boyega was stuck here in the snow, actually. He had to get out of here. Do you see that on Twitter?
No.
I saw like a news headline on my phone. It said, John Boyega might not make the Star Wars premiere. He's stuck in the snow in Atlanta.
Oh, that's funny.
And then I
He's
looked
been
on
hanging
Twitter.
out here lately. He was at the Savannah Film Festival. We didn't get a chance to see him or Patrick Stewart or anybody.
It was funny, though, because I looked on Twitter, and he's like, oh, my God, I'm stuck here. He's like, I need a pilot. That's what he said. And everybody's posting Han Solo and Poe Dameron gifs and stuff. Whatever. But I think he just made it from there. But I watched that, and then, of course, that night they have the, like, at 9:30 when the movie lets out, the social media embargo gets lifted. So you can't spoil anything. That was the last time I looked at Twitter, by the way, because I'm like, not doing it now.
I can't. I've been very minimal access to Facebook just because I've been posting some things,
But the stuff was very positive. I'll get into it when I talk about predictions. There's some little people. They never spoiled anything, but what people accuse about. I'm like, maybe. And then yesterday, I was sitting literally in meetings at work, and at some point, the review embargo lifted, not spoilers still. Like today, the spoiler one. So don't go anywhere now. There's spoiler videos all over YouTube now. Like YouTube, like our spoiler review of it. So you could just go find out right now. If you were Lynn, you could find out right now. Whatever you wanted to find out.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're like, don't look, man.
But yesterday, literally all the headlines came out. I was with my friend Zach, who's a big Star Wars fan, who I'm going to go see with tomorrow night. And I literally was like, now I'm like hitting a fever pitch because everyone from like Polygon to IGN, it's like Polygon's like, yes, it's that good, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, and then Jeff Kanata is one of the persons on the Slash Filmcast. He's on other stuff. And this guy doesn't ever watch trailers. That's how spoil free he goes. And so he does like a little mini video show. And I knew he's like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to give you like my 5-minute reaction. And he was like, he liked Force Awakens a lot. I think we have fused even more, but he's like, I love it. They did everything. He said everything we said. He actually liked Rogue One more than Force Awakens, which I don't think is true.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
But he started this thing and goes, it is the best Star Wars movie ever. He's like, it starts with the best Star Wars sequence ever put on film, and it only gets better from there. He's like, it is, and every one of those reviews said it, yes, it's the best. I was like, they said, like, the first headline I saw was like, it's the best since Empire Strikes Back. And I've seen the other half go, it's best ever. I'm like, they're like, this is what you wanted when you knew that you're going to do new movies and there's new stuff, and crazy directors and stuff. I was like, oh my God, I can't wait now. I just want to see this movie.
Yeah. Because now, you feel like they're not going to blow it or we would have heard people coming back. So now, this feels like it's the movie that we've been saying that we want it to be, where it experiments with the idea, but it carries on what we already saw work from episode 7.
Right, and it's a good transition into what I guess some of the stuff we want to talk about tonight. They talked about it. There's like the other big headline from it. It's not spoiler. It just said it goes. It's like super risk taking, and it changes the lore forever to the point where people go. They had to, like, some people actually didn't know what to think. They watched it twice to impress people. And they're like, I don't know what I thought about the first time. I loved it after the second time, but they said every one of them says you leave and you're like, what the? Like it makes you like you leave. You have to process it.
Oh,
like
I'm so excited because I feel like our theories sort of speak to that kind of change that needs to be made. So
and
now
everybody
really
says they really dive into
intrigued.
what it means to be, that Jedi, dark side, all that stuff. And I was like, but they all said it's like, they said fans will debate about this stuff forever and all these things, like what they bring forth. And I was like,
we will. I'll get some more books out of this thing.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I'm excited on a whole other level.
That's all I know. Just those little bits. But
very cool. Very cool stuff.
I mean, I'm not going to look at the internet tomorrow.
No. We get just this last stretch to go.
Right.
Like
I'm terrified to watch just a normal YouTube video because I'm afraid on the side it'll say,
add a new job.
This
can't
is
have
how
people coming up going, I said the preview last night. Blah, blah. Shut up!
But I'm just afraid there's some Joe Smo like, how did Luke kill Snoke? You're like, what? What happened? You're like, no, I don't want to see that.
Oh, exactly. Like I don't even watch Walking Dead, but I just have to see the social media to see this shocking character death. I don't know.
Yeah, I was already paranoid. And today, and I was kind of looking like for the last time around lunch, looking at YouTube, and then I scrolled down and I saw something, and just because I have there's a couple of Star Wars channels I follow, so it'll kind of suggest stuff. And then I saw something, I thought it was a spoiler, and I freaked out and turned it away. And I was like, hold on, I need to look up what that is. Not online, just like let me find that video again, because it said how does Kylo defeat Luke? And then I was like, oh shit! In the movie, so he beats him, he kills him. I was like, what's happening? And I was like, wait a second, that might be from before. And I was like, I looked at it, it's like it's from the first. I was like, okay, I'm fine now. I'm fine.
This is how sequestered I am right now. I was watching Jordan Klepper. I was watching The Opposition on Comedy Central,
right?
And they did a bit where they were like, okay, let's review some holiday movies, starting with Star Wars. Like, nope, I'll watch that tomorrow.
Right.
Like, I don't know where you guys are going with this. I'm sure it's fine and it's benevolent, but I'm just gonna wait.
Yeah, I started kind of like watching. Even those reviews, like you said, like I started like I watched Jeff Kanata. His was short, and he just kind of refused about it. I'm like, oh, he's like, hype is real. Gets excited. I'm like, okay. And I started watching some Collider ones and stuff, and they're like, they all loved it, and then they kind of started doubling into like, there's some stuff I don't want to hear what your problems are. I don't want to hear anything that you start quibbling.
I'm not going to go as far as that. Yeah, I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear what people like about it or not. We'll get there.
So, I mean, yeah, I'll hear general thoughts and just reactions, but I don't want to. But I'm done now because now it's too dangerous.
96% Rotten Tomatoes. I'm fine.
And I'm even you know what's even crazy, because I saw these ads on Facebook. Because you like Star Wars, you see their little ads they post, and then I saw it on TV. They have the trailers. They did it before, like in 4 days, in 3 days, right? Mm-hmm. They do all that stuff. But this one, it's crazy. Have you seen it? It says, do not let anyone spoil this for you. That's what it says in the official Star Wars trailer. It's like, do not let this get spoiled for you.
Yeah, go see it on the very first damn day.
So I was like, we're
done.
so much more.
I bought the tickets yesterday. We're going tomorrow night. It's a done deal.
Yeah. Last time, as you think about what we thought about going into, Rogue One, it'll be fun. But Force Awakens, we were super excited. It was just mind blowing, right? We're gonna see something again.
But we didn't know what to expect. So
there's also half trepidation, right? We went through it before, and you're like, this one, I am just full on. Yeah. I'm ready for something cool.
There's a real expectation going into this movie. I'm super excited because I've been studying the lore of it for 2 years because of that other movie.
Right.
I didn't have any real expectation going into The Force Awakens. I just wanted it to be good, and it looked like it would be good, and it was good, and I was happy. And then I got into this whole canon that they're doing and all these weird theories and stuff. I'm like, okay, now I don't want this movie to be what I say it should be, but I'm just have this super expectation of what it can be, because now I've been delving into the lore of it and seeing where it could go, and I'm just super excited to see what they might do with it. And they got Rian Johnson, and you're like, oh, and he's so weird, and they're so happy they're giving him his own trilogy of movies. Oh my god,
yeah. Which is awesome. We haven't talked about that, but that's amazing too. But I'm just like,
we'll just have to get to that.
Yeah, that we have a lot of Cloud
There's
City.
Nothing to talk about right now, but after we see Last Jedi, we're like, oh, now I have all kinds of ideas of what they might be doing.
Then we can jump into the books and the novelizations and all that stuff, and we can go from there.
I think the novelization doesn't come out till next March.
Yeah, I saw that. It's like March. I'm like, what?
What?
Yeah, The other one was like I listened to it the next week, and then I saw the movie.
It was, like,
I saw
before
the
the end
movie
of the
again
year.
after I listened to the book.
It was you had the Audible before I had the book.
Yeah.
We pre-ordered it to get it the day it released. Like they were on that.
So I don't know what the deal with that is.
Okay,
Who knows?
well, we'll just have to go see it even more times, I guess. We saw the other one like 5 times in the theater.
So I thought what we do is like I think we should talk about your the bigger topics you want to talk about, and then we'll end with some rapid fire. I had like 4 or 5 like yes or no to hold ourselves accountable. Like,
Yeah.
Do you think this will happen? Yes or no? Do you think this happened? Yes or no?
Yeah, because I don't know if you had a chance. I sent you the whole thing, but there's a lot of stuff there. But I don't know
Right.
if you had a chance to look over it. I have been over the last few days. I've been like at the super last minute releasing some of these on Kindle because I just almost ran out of time.
Right.
I've been writing up until the last second. There's stuff that comes out. Like I've been writing something, and then the new issue of Darth Vader will come out. And I'm like, holy shit, this blows the lid off of Inquisitors. That changes my
Right.
whole concept. It's like you've got to get this stuff out there because it's constant. It's so fun to explore that way because it's changing every day. The stuff they're adding.
Yeah. It'll be fun because I started digging your stuff, but it was just so soon that I was like, well, now I'll read the rest of it after I know.
It'll be fun. Yeah, because at this point, like all 3 parts of it are out with my initial theories, and what I'll do is now that we see the movie, is I'll do annotations to say the stuff that got proven or disproven, or that's still
Right.
left open, and that'll be the final Kindle, the full Kindle, and the print version will have that stuff on it. So that'll be a fun one for those of you who are a little worried. I'm sure that's why the sales haven't been coming in. That you were worried that I might spoil something for you. That way, after you see the film, you get... Because what I'll do is I'll do a matchbook, and that way you can just buy the print book and get the Kindle for free with it.
Right.
And that'll have both, and that'll be out there. But that'll be fun. And that way we can sort of just jump straight into some new stuff. Because I had some other stuff that I think the movie will feed into. So there'll be some more Kindles coming along. It won't be as big a process as it was going into this one.
Mad dash.
In retrospect, I'm like, you probably should have just done little Kindles as you went along. Like, yeah, probably. Yeah, that makes sense.
Sure.
That would have been better marketing. But I just got so excited.
Right.
So yeah, so where do you want to start? Because my theories go pretty deep and pretty far back.
What's your most... Well, let's just start. I don't know. We can...
I think if we're going to start with who I think Rey is, or who her parents are, or where she comes from.
Yeah, we can start there. That's a good access when everybody's wondering.
Yeah, that'll be a good starting point at the beginning of the Star Wars universe.
Right.
Because it does... I'm trying to think if we have to go that far back, but there is like a theory about... Yeah, you didn't get a chance to read the Aftermath books, did you?
No, I heard what I did from you, and I watched some like Star Wars explain things where they kind of summarize.
Because the stories themselves weren't fun, but some of the lore that got introduced there, just sort of on the fly, was interesting. This idea of the consecrated eremite. Have you heard of that?
No, I have not heard of it.
See, that's a thing that's going on, like Jakku, where this site of this Imperial research facility.
Oh, they're saying that. I saw a thing that was like where he had one of his observatories or whatever, like bases or.
Even further back than that, it was once a temple, and it was once watched over by this holy man called the Consecrated Eremite, and he left like thousands of years ago.
Right.
And he was the anchorites on Jakku still carry on his teachings, so he was sort of a benevolent kind of force user, but it was only like 1,000 years prior to that they had pledged their loyalty to the light side. So presumably before that they weren't Jedis or Sith. They were just their own thing, which means so was the Consecrated Eremite. I was like, well, that's an interesting idea.
And it's weird how, and I saw some of the connections like with, because I think it was in relation to like Snoke and what we know about him. And as they talk about the Aftermath books, how they talk about how that station, some of those other stations were, I love all that stuff. They're saying the Emperor was getting these messages from beyond.
Yeah, like this malicious presence.
Right. He started getting these things, and his whole plan was to take an expedition there until he died.
Yeah, which is interesting because he didn't start receiving those signals until they had plotted out the route from Jakku to the unknown regions, and then he started
Right.
receiving those transmissions. But that makes it sound like whatever's on the other side knew the way the whole time. It was only until then that he started getting those messages. So whatever's over there knows the way, it just can't cross the distance. Like
And see, just right there, just a snapshot of that, the idea that if this movie, what people are talking about, it takes chances of the lore and it just totally changes the game, something like that would exactly do it. If there's another force that's more, because even Andy Serkis, they said in an interview, he's more powerful than any Star Wars character. He just kind of dropped that.
Something that transcends Jedi and Sith.
Right. So if that happens, it just blows up that. And then, you know, so basically, like if Luke says Jedi's over, and then there's no Sith left, and he comes in and Snoke is this character who's like this whole other paradigm, that would change the lore forever. That would.
Well, think about it. Like Palpatine got these messages from the unknown regions, and all of a sudden Palpatine just decides that the birthplace of the Force is in the unknown regions.
Right.
He just decides that. He's not speaking to something. It's like a signal, like a presence. It's not an intelligence specifically that he's talking to. So whatever makes him think the birthplace of the Force is out there, he comes up with that kind of on his own. And sort of, we don't know the circumstances, but sort of on his own, so does Luke. Luke suddenly all of a sudden says, oh, here's this secret map that's a map of, like it's a portion of the universe that nobody recognizes. Possibly the unknown regions from the sounds of it. And he says, you know what I think is on the other side of that? It's like, I don't know, the first Jedi Temple? Yeah, that's what I think. Like, they both think the exact same thing. Palpatine assumes that it's some kind of malicious force. Luke assumes that it's the very first Jedi Temple. They both kind of just randomly assume that it's their preferred aspect of the Force that's being represented there, but they're both being drawn to what seems like the same place.
Right.
Because this map that he got hold of has to have been someplace no one knew where it was.
Right. I do like this aspect of a little bit of canon of Luke canon that we've gotten, which isn't much. You know, you see that Mark Hamill made up the weird backstory where I killed my kid with a lightsaber or something, like, and then he's like, I don't know, that was his head canon. That wasn't really what happened.
Whatever, I don't know.
But just little bits in the comics, and then also he was in that Battlefront game or whatever. And it's basically the Battlefront game. I just watched the cutscenes like on YouTube, and it's basically like the scene with him. It's like they try to bring it. It's like so funny, such an homage to this Thrawn, because basically they're like at a weapons mountain just like that, you know, in Thrawn, and Luke's just there, and the guy shows up. He's like, hey, and he's like, I'll help you get in here, and he helps him get in there. And like the lock to the door is like a force lock, you know. He's like, there's no handles. He's like, I can do it, and he's like, and it opens up. And inside, he just kind of looks in these random things, and he finds this weird compass thing or whatever. And he's like, do you mind if I keep this? And he's like, I guess. And he's like, thank you. And he's just very just calm and stuff. He's like, all right, see you later. Like, I like this picture that it's painting, that he's not just, it doesn't seem like maybe at some point he tried with Kylo and put up shop and tried to do this little school or something. But it really looks like he is just constantly on the move and searching for what all this stuff means and stuff. Right, that's been his mission.
In the comics too.
Right, that's what I mean.
Knowing about these observatories now, you start seeing these ziggurats everywhere, because there's just, when they did the Shattered Empire comic, there was a whole, like a story where he goes to this Imperial base on Bettine, and it's like this weird pyramid where Palpatine was secretly doing experiments on the remnants of the Force tree that used to grow in the middle of the Jedi Temple. And Luke is there to rescue the last two living branches of that Force tree.
Right. I saw that.
That's totally looks like one of the observatories too. It's like, well, damned if it doesn't look like they're trying to harvest the Force energy of those trees, which is specifically like in Aftermath. He says that the narrative says that one of the observatory's purpose was to draw the living energy from people, and that's what our whole deal with Project Harvester was, when we've been talking about what we saw in Clone Wars, and then again in Rebels, where you see they're specifically trying to gather up these Force sensitive children. Or in Clone Wars, he said he was trying to make Sith spies. In Rebels, they don't say what they were trying to do, but Project Harvester was this big deal where they were trying to track down anybody Force sensitive.
Are you saying that the mind of a child can destroy the world, like in Dark Tower?
Well, I think specifically they're trying to draw out the living Force energy of these children.
Right.
Because we know for a fact that kyber crystals are a power source that they use not only in the Death Star, but also in Starkiller. And that's just an extension of the same idea. of trying to harness this force energy, this sort of distilled living force.
So is
into
your
something
idea
we can
who
use.
Rey is connected to that she's one of
Yeah.
these kids?
That's exactly what I think. I think that because we don't know what happened to the Inquisitors after Rebels, because they kind of, some of them die and then the whole thing disappears. But we do
Now, the
know
Inquisitors are kind of like U.S. Marshals trying to hunt down Jedis, right?
what they are is
Basically.
like failed Jedi that Palpatine gathered up and turned to the dark side. Like that's how
Okay.
much we know. Probably Padawans that had failed or something like that. Like, because they're not very powerful, and Vader and Palpatine don't think very much about them. They're just like, whatever.
Right.
These guys are kind of weirdos, but that's fine. They just send them out because they just need a lightsaber brigade to round up the last of the Jedi or anybody who has force ability. And when that's over with, their responsibility becomes Harvester, which is to find these force-sensitive children and abduct them for some purpose. Now, a lot of this goes down on Arcanus Academy, which is where General Hux's dad is the commandant.
Right.
And he has his very own program called the Commandant's Cadets, where they do something very similar, except they're just looking for kids that they can bring in and indoctrinate to become perfect soldiers.
Right.
And we know that's still going on because that's exactly what Finn is in Episode 7. So he's the product of one of those programs. But we just don't know what happens to the Jedi aspect of that, because for a while the Inquisitors were right there with them, doing the same thing, except whenever they found a candidate who was also force sensitive, they'd get shoved over to the Inquisitors, presumably on one hand to become future Inquisitors, but on the other hand, to do what? Right. I don't know. Like, I think part of that was Palpatine wanting to find power, but I do think part of that became trying to harvest that energy for whatever it is that Snoke really is. Because I think whatever he is, he can't come from the unknown regions. I don't think he has any physical power. That's why you see him in like Episode 7, just sort of speaking to them remotely. Now let me tell you my real Snoke theory.
All right, let's do it.
What's funny is if you have a theory, Google it, because you're not alone. Like, that's the one thing I found out, because there's already people going, yeah, here's some people saying this, and I don't think it's true, because I was like, one day I was like dead serious. I was like, I know exactly who Snoke is. Like, oh yeah, who is he?
To the point that they're one of the big popular shirts. You see that one says your Snoke theory sucks. Like, people have that shirt.
I posted that. I did post a link to that, because that was the one where it was like the Sith no one knew existed theory.
Yeah.
Which doesn't hold up very well. Because early in the days, people thought, well, Snoke might be the Emperor, Snoke might be Darth Plagueis, or something like that.
Darth Plagueis was the first people's reaction immediately. Right?
Either one of those is viable within the canon. It was just either one of them would be boring. So I don't think they would do that. But I do have this idea that the son of Mortis is going to play into this. And I kind of think that's within the canon, one of the more, I don't want to say viable, because a lot of people have a lot of good ideas, but one thing I find interesting about the Son of Mortis is that mythology of that weird storyline where they all go to that planet kind of aligns with what we already know has happened in the canon in terms of how what we assume to be Snoke has communicated with Palpatine and possibly even Luke already.
Right.
Because that whole storyline starts with this distress signal that's like thousands of years old. And they go there, and then they find that planet Mortis, and they find the father and the son and the daughter, and they play this weird drama out. And what they end up doing is, like, these are sort of immortal beings, so that the story shows them like killing these guys, but these guys are metaphorical for some other primordial essence of the Force. Like, she's like the light side, he's the dark side, the father's the balance.
Right.
So there really isn't any killing. I mean, they become a metaphor for what we're going to see happen. You know, how the light side sort of fails and the dark side rises. But I kind of think that whole storyline works as a metaphor for what we're seeing in the new saga. Even down to how it starts with this weird sort of signal that reaches out to, in the case of Palpatine, he just hears a malevolent presence that he's drawn to. And then whatever it is with Luke, he just assumes that there is some birthplace of the light side of the Force, like this first Jedi presence.
Right.
Is somewhere. He doesn't say the unknown regions, but wherever it is the map leads to is a place that nobody can recognize to look at it. Like, even just seeing a part of it, you would think, like, well, I know this goes to the Gabuchi system, but I don't know, there's a hole in the middle or whatever. They don't say that. They're just like, I don't know what the hell we're looking at. I don't know any of this stuff.
Well, that's got to be it, because, I mean, the book, the little Journal of the Wills thing he's in the trailer, it's like a star map or something, isn't it? Like, it's like a weird... So
Which
it's
would be the concept, yeah.
Right.
Whatever, when Palpatine managed to map out whatever he was doing in the Jakku facility, and he got this idea that the signal that he was getting was the birthplace of the Force, well, we see Luke in the comics going and sort of plundering all of Palpatine's information, and we know that map comes from the Imperial Archives because it says so. I don't know if they say so in the movie, but they definitely say it in the novelization, that he got that map from the Imperial Archives.
Who, R2?
Well, that's R2 is cataloging those records, and that's where he got it.
It says that in the novelization, at least.
Yeah,
I remember.
So that's where they got it, and the original record was deleted. We know both of those things from the novelization.
Right.
So if we can assume that that's the same map, the one that Palpatine got when he plotted the course of the unknown regions, and he got this signal from this weird entity, then they're looking for the same thing. They just think it's something different.
Right.
And that's like my whole idea of the Force, and I kind of hope that what they're doing within this new movie is like, it seems to you that it's something different because you have this dogma you're following, but it's actually the same thing. It's the yin yang, it's the Tao, it's the two sides together make that whole. Like, there is no separation of the two. And you see that over and over again, even in the mythology of Star Wars. Like, they keep talking about balance. It's like, you can't have balance if you kill off the whole other side of the argument, and then there's just you. You know that's not balance, right? But that's what you both seek to do by pressing these dogmas that you've created against your preferred variant of this power. But whatever the Force is, it's represented on both sides, whether it's the light side or the dark side.
Can I stop you for just a second?
Yeah, so what do you think
Something just
related to that? This is a weird for you because, like, we had on a version of this last week before I heard people...
Hang on just a second for me.
All right.
Andrew, their house might be on fire. You can find out. I think we're okay.
You okay?
Do you have another lamp anywhere?
Another lamp? I don't know.
Okay, that's all right. Go ahead with your show. I'm fine. I'm good.
What happened?
I think that old lamp just had sort of a frayed wire to it, and I think it gave out. And it may have blown the circuit strip.
Sorry.
You're delving in things you try and understand.
Yeah.
You're surging the Force energy at your house.
The brighter the light, the blacker the shadow.
This will not go the way you think it will.
Well, it's funny because I went deep into some stuff in this book and getting into sort of Taoism and that philosophy and the concept of the yin yang is like that. I mean, the Force in the story is directly derived from that philosophy. So,
well, what I'm saying is, so we've talked about this, the Great Jedi kind of stuff and all these things. And if Snoke's some other source of energy or some other thing in a whole nother paradigm,
primordial
that's cool.
dark side god.
But you could kind of be, I think if you're watching a movie, you're like, oh, he's just like some other thing. Cool. And if Luke turned bad, you'd be like, okay. What I was saying is that if we did this a week ago, I might have a different imperative. But now that I know, just from the effusive stuff, even in that can be not spoilery, but it can direct this conversation a little bit. Because every one of them says you do not see coming what happens in it that changes the Star Wars universe forever. Like, and I can't think it's got to be something more than just. I mean, I think it's very lore based, right? But
yeah, because I don't think the identity of Snoke matters in the overall story.
And that's what I'm saying. And like Luke turning bad wouldn't be a big deal. People like, yeah, we could see that, or whatever it is. Ray turning, like all these things that people say, just this binary thing. So I'm wondering, with this stuff in mind, that kind of, because I think it has to do with this, right? The source of all that stuff. What do you think that could be?
Well, we're not the only ones who have caught on to the fact that this sort of Jedi versus Sith conflict isn't really a good versus evil conflict. Like the Sith tend to be bad guys and
Right.
the Jedi tend to be good guys, but they're both misdirected. They're both misguided sort of versions of the philosophy because they both think that exploring the other one to any extent is wrong.
Right.
So I do think this idea of the gray Jedi is going to be something that, I mean, that's in the novelization of The Force Awakens too, where he actually says like that resolving it through, you know, the discovery of the gray Jedi
Right.
is the secret. And I think for what people are saying, because to me, I think that you and I and people who've looked at this from the perspective that we have will not be quite as blown away as some people who still think like, you know, Jedi is the absolute good. Like you're kind of missing out on some of the hints that have been dropped. Like if you watched Clone Wars and you think Jedi is the absolute good, then you kind of missed some of that show. Because I was thinking about this today.
Or just the prequels too, right? The Jedis are.
Well, the
shit.
same. It's the same thing. Clone Wars just does it better because they let you see how many decisions they make and how many choices that they have to make that there isn't a clear moral choice.
Right.
But when you start getting into stuff like Dark Disciple, where by the end of the Clone Wars, the Jedi have basically decided the only way to stop this war is to assassinate Count Dooku. You're like, God damn, that is a pretty dark attitude. And then they do it by trying to deceive Asajj Ventress into being the one who does it. It's like, God, that's even worse. And then I was thinking about it today.
Dooku, who was a person who left because he's disenfranchised by their bureaucracy and stuff.
And granted, he's become pretty evil in
Yeah.
in the time from there. But Asajj was more or less non-threatening at that point. She had turned away from Dooku. She turned away from the Sith. She was a bounty hunter. She was doing her own thing. She had sort of given up on her idea of having vengeance on Dooku. And then they're like, well, we need to go stoke that back up. It's like, you guys should not be encouraging this concept toward vengeance at all, but instead you're trying to sort of impair her moral progress to do this thing that it is so morally repugnant to you that you think you need someone else to do it.
Right.
But then that's sort of the moral decision that the whole Rebel Alliance makes at the end of the war, is because, like, okay, it's messed up in the first movie that there are 1 million people on the Death Star. That's difficult to digest as a moral decision. But they've already blown up a planet. Like, they're gonna blow up more planets. Their billions of lives are being threatened or have already been extinguished by this device.
Oh, and it's a military base that's coming in for attack, so there's no real choice.
And we're trying to blow it up. You could eject at any time. You don't have to stay there thinking you're going to win. So it's a wash. But in the third movie, they attack the Death Star specifically because they know the Emperor is going to be there.
Right.
It's an attempt at assassination. So it's the same moral problem that represented the sort of downfall of the Jedi at the end of the Clone Wars, because that's the same issue.
Well, and if we're to like believe it, like at first people are like, well, this doesn't make sense. But then you read the novelization, you read those bloodlines, all that stuff. You're like, the reason, because it feels like the New Republic happened and the same crap happened again, where they're like, yeah, none of that matters. We're fine. We don't have to do this stuff. The whole reason Leia starts, they start doing this resistance because, like, guys, this is happening again. We're getting buried in all this stuff, and we're making this. You know what I mean? It starts as the same type of issue.
It's very difficult. It's cloudy at that point, and this is why I think Luke's really sitting it out, because at that point, the rebellion becoming the Republic are like, well, we can't keep doing that stuff. We're trying to build a legitimate, peace-loving society. We just can't. We have to make peace treaties and believe in them. And then Leia's like, yeah, but you can't trust these guys. And like both of them are right, but the people like Mon Mothma who are like building this new republic are like, yeah, but we can't keep acting like resistance freedom fighters. We're trying to be the established government. And if we keep an army and we're constantly looking for enemies, like how do we not become an empire? Right. And that's sort of like, and at that point, Luke kind of just steps out because he's like, all I see is, no matter how you frame it, the same stuff just keeps happening over and over again. Good guys say they're good, they say the bad guys are bad, and then the conflict keeps going on forever, no matter how much we say we're winning. Like, and the Jedi, in particular era, they played a crucial part in how damaging that was to the galaxy. I think for Luke, it didn't happen all at once, but his failed attempt to rebuild the Jedi Order, I think, was a wake-up call for him, saying, well, wait a second. This is everything that was ever wrong with the Jedi.
Well, that's him going, like, I'm not one for politics. I'm just going to start a school, settle down. And it's like, hold on. This didn't work either, because he's going with the same, it's the same paradigms going forward.
Yeah, we can't just keep doing this conflict. It's like, if there is a force as powerful as the Jedi in the universe, then they can't just start picking sides in wars. Because that's what went wrong the first time. That's where we got Sith from in the first place. It's not like Sith and Jedi both organically sprang out of the same idea, but separately. Like the Sith were a rebellious offshoot of the Jedi for that same idea.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, for some reason, Attack of the Clones is on. Those are movies are on this weekend on like TNT, and I watched a little bit of the middle Attack of the Clones
for some reason. I'm pretty sure I know why they were on.
Well, oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, they were on for this, but I was like, but if it's kind of an interesting thread of people being disillusioned with either side, and because even when we first meet Luke, he wants to go to the academy, or he wants to be he doesn't know, you know what I mean? He just wants to be. But Anakin, you can really draw that line to Anakin to Kylo. Right, because I like that idea that Kylo is training with him, and then he like finds out that Darth Vader's is. You get this picture of him going slower with the training because he's trying to be careful, you know, and then because he sees all the strength in him or whatever, and
I feel like Luke never taught him how to use a lightsaber. If you watch him in Force Awakens, he's good, but he has no clear training.
Yeah, he doesn't know, and she doesn't know, and that's why they can do it. Yeah, they're not what they could be. And then you get the idea, he finds out Darth Vader. It's like you're going to this one side, this pacifist side, and then he's this other side, and it's like there's a common thread. And Anakin really approached it in the wrong way. He's like, well, they were made to do that. You know, we will force them to agree. You know, and all these things.
We'll create
and it's just order. It's so heavy-handed. But just take the subtext of that, you know, and go, okay, that's interesting. What he sees is a broken system on both sides, right? But nobody's there to talk to him about it. And he gets kind of seduced by the dark side of it, right? And then realizes blah, blah, blah. And even Luke, when he comes back to it, Luke has to go pretty dark to get him back, right? He's wearing black. He's fighting him. He's angry. Like you know, it's a fight for his soul, but he's not untainted.
Well, he has to go to the very edge. That's what makes Luke's sacrifice, you know, meaningful, because he has to go to the very edge of losing himself in order to bring his father back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like Obi-Wan, you feel like those people would even like just like taint themselves by getting to that situation, right? Even though they said, because even when you say like you have to face them, you realize that you feel like that's a admission of from Obi-Wan. Force Ghost, you're like, yeah, looks like that's what's going to happen.
But they still feel like facing him means that he has to defeat him. They're still tainted by that attitude, even though they've sort of ascended to a higher level of being. They still are bound by those wrong attitudes that they had back when they were alive as Jedi. The idea that you have to defeat Vader in order to move forward.
Now that the prequels like fall into legend or whatever, you know, and you can just look at them as like tableaus and stuff.
Oh yeah,
they work that way.
They make a lot of sense now.
Yeah, because even those prequels is like, yeah, he fought him. That's one of the most emotional scenes where they're fighting at the end. He's like, "You're my brother." And I does all that stuff, and then he just leaves the brother there.
Yeah, like an asshole.
Like, wouldn't you?
And steals his lightsaber. I just steal your lightsaber and don't even put you out of your misery. I just let you burn alive.
Right, and that's not what any like movie hero would do. You know, you try to save the bad guy, and you do it. I was like, he just coldly walked off. While he's on. I was
if you hadn't done that, then the whole universe would have been better for it.
So I was like, yeah, Obi-Wan and them I get it. They're snobs. You know, they're goody two. They're lawfully good snobs to this degree that they're not
locked in their own dogma. Even when they start trying to do a little bit better, they're still locked in their own dogma. It takes someone like Luke, who isn't indoctrinated in that dogma, to say, well, you know what? I think I'm just going to try to appeal to my father's good side. I think I'm just going to save him. And like, no, you can't save him. The only way to save him is to kill him at this point. And of course, Obi-Wan would think that because that's exactly what should have happened.
And that's what they show him in the Force Cave, too. They're like, oh, you could become him if you get near him. And he's like, no, I think I can save him.
Hey,
I think
get why you think that. And I get that that's a risk. But you guys, the reason you think that's the only possibility is because you're clouded by your own experiences, which are limited. But that's what makes Luke such a transcendent hero in that, because he finds the third option. He's like, I'm not going to become Darth. And that's what really you should be taking into this movie is like what he decides to do isn't a Jedi or a Sith solution. It's a personal solution. It's a family solution. He's like, I'm going to save my father. I'm going to appeal to him as a human.
Well, and that's what I don't understand with, I mean, we haven't seen the movie, obviously, so we'll get to see. But even what they portray so far, at least his attitude of what we've seen in the trailers of Luke, you know, because Mark Hamill had this thing. It's like, I thought Luke was this guy. And then I read Ryan saying, he's like, are you serious? He's like this. And they're just implying that he's like this curmudgeon and that's like, you know, no, I'm not doing any of this. But I was like, that was because he's like, Luke was so optimistic. It's like, yeah, he was until Return of the Jedi. Remember that? Remember when he got his Return Empire? He got his hand cut off, and he's like sad the rest of the time. He's the whole movie in Jedi. He's sad, like he is a different person. And even
the resolution there is pretty sad. Yeah, he saves his soul, but he dies.
But his defining moment is throwing that lightsaber away and go, no, you'll never turn me. Like that thing is going, no, I'm just not gonna play.
Yeah,
like
that is a rejection of the Jedi and the Sith.
Right. So you can understand how that person, especially after disappointments and trauma, would go, the safest way is not to play, and I'm just going to go off to this island.
I don't know. I got it in my head that it was my responsibility to teach other... Because what Yoda says is you've got to pass on what you have learned. He doesn't say create a new generation of Jedi. Like, pass on what you have learned. Not like you've learned more. Like you have experienced more than we did when we were screwing things up. Like, make sure this is the lesson that you pass on.
Well, and I think that's the kind of, I love somehow the soul from these observatories to Thrawn, how this soul of Zahn, he's still alive, but all those stories are coming into this, you know, because that's his defining thing that I remember when I read this book or listened to those books a couple years ago from your recommendation. The coolest thing about that, like why it could have been a movie, is because everybody has different concerns now. Leia's, you know, doing this. Han's trying to put two ends together and be a husband or whatever, right? But are they married, right? Yeah, I think they're married. Yeah. So, but Luke's such a cool story because he's not what I think this new canon is much more like he gets on the trail about this new stuff first. But that canon was all about, I don't know how to teach people to do this. I feel very responsible for the power that I have, and I don't know how to do that. And that's what his whole mission in that thing.
The
that's
lesson
why
that he had learned
and stuff
was what Obi-Wan told him was, I thought that I could train Vader as well as Yoda, and I was wrong.
Right.
It's like, well, that's a wonderful way of illustrating what terrible
in the trailer. He says, I've seen, I mean, they might be talking about something else. It's just a trailer, but the idea is that he's talking to Rey and he's talking about Kylo, right? Is I've seen this raw strength once before. And he could be talking about his dad. I don't know. But you know what I mean?
Well, I do kind of think that she is a virgin in the same way that Anakin was.
Yeah, I think I love that idea, the Dalai Lama idea. I love that idea that there's a thing that appears.
Rey is born almost exactly that time. And then after that's when all the terrible things start happening.
Well, it's a Matrix, right? It's the anomaly or whatever. That's what Neo is too.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean you're bad. That's, you gotta, like, if you look in the Joseph Campbell stuff, it's like this is the cosmogonic element. It's like we start thinking of like the hero's journey, like Luke, where it's like I have this personal moral thing to do. It's like cosmogonic heroes don't have that same moral aspect to them. The cosmogonic hero's purpose is to sort of tear down the world and so that it can be rebuilt. You know, it's cyclical, like it's natural. And that's what Anakin was. When you're like, I don't really connect with this in the prequels. It's like, that's because Anakin's not a very relatable character. But what he's doing is cosmogonic. He is tearing down the entire world so that a new one can take shape. And that's, to a lesser degree, Luke does that because he defeats Vader. But it's a much more personally motivated journey that he's going on. He's like the classical kind of hero. But with Rey and maybe even Kylo, you're seeing these more cosmogonic elements. Again, it's like The world has taken shape. That hold fast is keeping you from making changes that are necessary. So some element has to rise up, tear it all down.
Right.
And that's the cosmogonic hero. And so, like, it's either going to be, I really think in terms of like being analogous to Anakin, it's Rey and not Kylo.
Right. Or maybe it's both of them.
Well, I think seeing Rey and Kylo work together is going to be the thing that has to happen in these movies that we haven't seen before. It's like, because they definitely are the yin and yang. Like, seeing these two come together is the whole crux of what
that
makes
would be
the
an
saga
interesting
necessary.
twist if they break off together. Not like, oh, she's turning evil. What if they just like, hey, we're on our own now?
Yeah, well,
You and me.
What you need to find out. The problem with the Darth Vader redemption is that he does one good thing and dies, and then we're like, okay, well, he turned out okay. It's like, no, he lived a lifetime of horrible.
We saw it in Rogue One. All these things, right?
Yeah, you can't just say that he did one good thing at the end.
That was a sleepy Sunday for him, the Rogue One. Like, imagine all the horror. He killed the younglings. He did that to... Imagine him doing that to a room full of 30 kids and stuff, right?
Kylo is right to think that he might have just been out of his mind when he made that one mistake. Like, because otherwise he was consistently horrible. But the real redemption is that you are made to change your mind, and you have to stay that course. Like Finn, like, I'm not going to be a stormtrooper. I'm going to be a good guy now. That's difficult because I have that other life leading up to now that I have to overcome those mistakes. And we don't see that in a Darth Vader. Darth Vader's a metaphorical redemption, but as a person, he wasn't redeemed, really.
Oh, well, there's an interesting dynamic too. I don't know how this plays into prediction or what it could mean. But there's an interesting idea if Rey is that figure and she is this fountainhead of this new type of energy or whatever, you know, and Kylo's not that. Kylo, from what we've seen of him, maybe he's not that, but maybe like of all of this, the one thing's like, well, is, you know, Luke going to teach her? Now it's like, oh, is Kylo going to teach her? Maybe it's Rey that's going to teach it, because he's almost like a compass needle, because you see him struggling, like he's fighting the light and he's fighting the darkness. You know what I mean? Like he's caught in the middle of this turbulent thing, and maybe the answer is no. Stop.
Yeah,
Stop trying to fight both sides of this.
He's the consecrated Eremite. He's like
Right.
the bloodline from the original. I mean, like the original, like not even in anything other than early drafts of the script, but the lore of this idea of like this original Skywalker who discovered the Force and founded the idea of the Jedi. It's like, that's like a bloodline that Luke and Kylo are actually a part of, this sort of fated character to carry that on.
Yeah, what is this weird thing where like Anakin has kids, he has twins, and they never even talk about this, right? Like the idea that what if because of that power gets diverged a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, but I mean, this is kind of weird talking about that, but it's the idea that's like, well, he's not really a chosen one. This line happened because Anakin just happened, and he's biologically can have kids. So his kids are going to have this is somewhat of this infusion and all stuff. They're twins, so they're not this kind of tumultuous thing. There's some kind of balance just because they can balance.
They
you know
together
what I mean?
represent the balance. So that would be neat.
Especially when they find each other. But when Leia has this kid, it's all within this one dude, you know, and he's not necessarily the chosen one as this being, but he has this turmoil because of just the, you know, his ancestry. But Rey is, because we're talking about them as being these characters that are born of the whatever the essence of the stuff that she
the
can
balancing
handle it.
aspect is what she is.
And her job is to guide him to whatever. And like, that would be neat if they're the third little faction now or something, you know?
I would love to see that, because again, like, we think Kylo is the dark side because he's trying so hard to be evil, but he's actually kind of bad at it. And we think that Rey is the good side because she's so good, but there's a darkness in her too.
It's like Quake on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She goes off. She's still doing good, but she's in her own thing, right?
Well,
I started catching up on that show. It's the same type of thing.
It's the same thing where everybody's capable of both because they're both necessary aspects. The light and the shadow are the same thing. That's where you get back to the Tao, where the Tao says the same thing that the Journal of the Will says, is like, it's going to be through both that you find this equilibrium. I mean, that's actually in the Tao Te Ching. It's like, it's within, you know, the sun and the shadow together. And then that's talking about both sides of the yin yang. Both sides of the yin yang are represented in in the Force.
Well,
But
yeah,
light and dark
that's
aren't supposed to be good and evil. They represent
and it's a force of
completely
it's the
different aspects.
cosmic force and the material force. It's sacred
Well,
and
the cosmic
profane. It's
force
also-
versus living force gets into a whole different thing. But yeah, you have the divine spark versus the life spark. That's what they
Right.
represent, and they're both necessary, and neither one of them is either good or evil by nature. Like, because nature is not good or evil. Nature is like the whole concept in mythology is like this is something that happens, and you need to understand that it happens, but it isn't good or evil. It happens either way.
The interpretation of it, because I loved, because now that I watched those clone things, and I just had the cosmic force. What is the living force and the cosmic force, right?
Oh yeah.
And the living force is the dark side, basically, right?
Well, the living force would seem to be the element that the dark side is drawn from, because it's the force that surrounds us, and it's the most immediately accessible.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. It's faster, more seductive, right? He's saying, is it more powerful? No, it's the same thing. So it's like,
yeah, but you're talking about passion is what they're driven by,
Right.
and physical life and physical being. That's the living force.
But that's what I'm saying. It is the sacred and profane. It's like, what is it? It was like, having a girlfriend, having a bunch of money more important than being like spiritually. It's like, no. But they're both sides of something, and you could say people would immediately say there's evils to the material world. The material world is what we live in, so it is a thing, and it is a thing but we always have to have a balance. It's just like, and they always say that you have to have a step in both worlds.
It's in the Tao Te Ching again. The Tao Te Ching says is like the value of the bowl is the part of the bowl that is void. Like that's the Jedi thing. They're like, that's right. Yes, the bowl is an object, but it's the empty space within the object that is valuable. And the Sith are like, yeah, but without the bowl, you couldn't make use of the empty space. It's like, yeah, but if you don't use the bowl, like if you value the object or you value only the empty space within, then you're not getting any value from the bowl.
Right. It's not the
it's
Tibetan monk. It's not the monk hermit.
Yeah, they're like, we have to meditate on the cosmic force and its distant spiritual ramification. Like, no, we need our physical value here.
Well, that's right. Saying it's not the Wall Street broker doing blow off of somebody's back or whatever in the real world or whatever that is. It's this weird. That's maybe extreme case, but like if you go as material as you want to be, right? It's whatever Wolf of Wall Street, right? To whatever a Tibetan monk or something there. It's in between that, right? It's like that's a long, that's a big spiritual thing. It's like you can't be both. You can't have your head in the clouds. You have feet on the ground, right? That's the Lord of the Rings, right?
You have to find that balance.
That's where the elves live. The elves fight the long defeat, right? They know they're going to die someday. So supposedly, but they know they're going to die. All this stuff happens. You're going to. I mean, that's what, because that in essence, that's what life is. Do you get distracted and just totally forget that you're going to die one day and just get lost playing video games? Or do you just sit around and go, I'm going to die. This sucks. You're like,
it's
no,
Watchmen.
You play the game, right? You have to go
he's
forward.
He's a transcendental figure, and he knows that how everything's going to play out. But at some point, they draw him into it because at some point, he still sees the value of being involved. And the elves the same way in the Lord of the Rings. So at some point, we have to participate, even though we know how it's going to play out. But that's the problem with the Jedi is like we bring young Anakin to the Jedi and we say, I think he's chosen one. They're like, I think that's kind of iffy. So whatever. And then they never again wonder what we're supposed to do with this orphaned little slave boy. They're just like, whatever. And then even when someone decides, well, we are going to teach him, it's like, okay, I guess. No one ever bothers to ask this kid what he would want. They just wonder what needs to be done because he's part of this prophecy. And that's how Anakin ends up being so divided and looking for order because his life is completely chaotic. No one ever values him as a human being and no one ever gives him any choices.
And then not even to get super intellectual political about this. I'm not going to even take a side on this. But it's the same problem you have with politics. There's usually a conservative, right? In any country, there's conservative and progressive movements going against each other. And a lot of times the progressives end up being this intellectual, abstract things like we have such high ideals. We value this over this, whatever. While meanwhile, you have conservative people like those people that are living in material world because they're fighting to survive sometimes on some side of it. The half of the people, are like, hey, but what about what I'm doing? You know what I mean? That's great that you like all types of things, but I need something now. It is always that fight. And you feel that's the same thing. It's like there always tends to be a side that goes up to this ethereal thing, like this is great, but the other side's like, but hold on, let's be practical about this. Sometimes
Well,
I'm not even saying that's
any
what right or
philosophy
wrong.
to its extreme, and it doesn't work. And that's what happens with the Jedi and the Sith. It's each philosophy to its extreme, to the point where neither actually supports anything except fighting the other. That's kind of how, and that's what you see in politics. That's how you know that your philosophy has failed, when its extreme application is simply to be antithetical to something else.
Right. And just the same way politics on both ends, they turn to fascism. If you keep going with this stuff, it's like what we're talking about. It's really far extremes. You keep going, they circle around each other, and it's a circle, right? Yeah. It's this whole big piece.
Well,
that's
and
what it is.
It's the same problem. It's
right.
Like, if there are correct arguments on either side, then both sides should be represented in every conversation.
Right.
And that's the same with Jedi and Sith, and the same is true in politics, same is true as everything. The whole reason that people try to create divisive issues is because they don't want people coming to that conclusion, because keeping people divided is a way to try to maintain some system of power on one side or another. And that's what happens with the Jedi and the Sith. You know, people promote these dogmatic ideas that they have to maintain hostility with each other, to the point where this is true. You see this in some religions as well, where we created as part of our dogma that it's immoral to question the actual belief system. And the only reason to build that into a system is because you're afraid that if it's questioned, it'll fall apart. Because any valid belief system should hold up under scrutiny.
Right.
But the same thing happens with the Jedi and the Sith. It's like one step towards the dark side, and that's it. So that sort of means, like, you're telling me that I can never study and see what they're doing, because I will immediately become dark side.
And your idea about questioning and just, it's the secret of like denying the other side completely without actually realizing that's part of you is the thing that's a secret. It's like, yeah, in your religion, you can be celibate. In the real world, it might cause some issues in those areas where those guys are. And not a big enough population sample, you're going to get some, there's going to be some divergence there of stuff that happened. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, because you're denying that we are actually humans, while you can say it's great and we have these ideals and we pray every day or do whatever, you're still a human being. You still have hormones,
and what
you
is
still
it?
have all these
it
things.
Degenerates into abstract prejudice is what it does.
Right.
Because then people say, I don't like that those other people do that because it's against my religion. It's like, I don't apply it to my own decisions necessarily. And that's a breakdown of philosophy. And the breakdown of philosophy for the Jedi and the Sith is always in the same thing we run into the everyday world, which is the breakdown of the philosophy is that I was afraid that if you got wind of the other side of the argument, that I wouldn't be able to hold your interest.
Right, it's North Korea, right?
Yeah, it's like exactly. We just have to. It's politics. It's everything. It's like we always have to the echo chamber, like to a lesser degree, in what everybody does. In even in the entertainments that they take in, is I look for everything that affirms my worldview because I don't want to be challenged.
Right.
But you should want that, and I think a lot of people do in real life. I think those extreme issues get represented at a higher level. At a lower level, at our level, I think people question all the time. I think that's less likely. But when you start putting organized movements to it and you make people pledge a sort of allegiance to those organized movements, you take away their ability to individually question.
Right. And I love this conversation. This is going good because this is actually tying into, I've been talking about this stuff recently with just people in general. And one of I find these two syndromes in people when I find people lacking empathy for certain, just like this is at work, or people are like, well, that guy's an idiot. I was like, well, hold on. Because I think one, and this goes right into this, believe me, this goes right into Jedi Sith, is one, people have this one thing
where to Star Wars, man.
We have an antagonist syndrome, right? Where the other person has to be this antagonist. This guy refuses to help me. I was like, he doesn't actually care about you. So one, he's not actually purposely doing this to you. You know what I mean? Like everybody has like, that guy is like, one, he doesn't know your name. So forget about that. Most people just care about themselves. But two, I find, I mean, I don't know if this is because of a lack of empathy or this causes a lack of empathy, but I find that people, this is what we do this with movies all the time. Like again, Justice League, we went into, we know what it was going to be. We didn't go, this is going to be something. It's like, no, I know what it was and I enjoy what it is. It's because we had context. And I find that people, whether they have a hard time or whether they refuse to do it, we refuse to approach the world with context. And that the world swims in context. That's all the world is. And so Meaning, when you have a situation, do you judge it based on, well, this is what I think, right? Or do you go, well, like even in people you hate, politicians, I'm not going to name people right now, but you go, I still might hate things certain people do, but you go, I can understand him. I see why he does that because this, and this, right? Like understanding a person, having context, really just approaching it. What is that context instead of going, well, I believe this, so that's not, yeah, you can still believe your thing, but if you want to change stuff, you got to work with context and figure out what's going on here and where it is. And that's what you feel like with the Sith, the Jedi, especially the Jedi. We haven't got to see a lot of the Sith political machinations, right?
The Sith don't seem particularly reasonable either,
right.
But we do see it on the Jedi side more because
we're just going to say, no, don't do that.
More.
Don't do that. And Anakin's like, but hold on. Can't get married. You can't even love. Why is that a weird? Like,
what the hell?
Well,
that's the bowl at the end. Like they're like, we just have to forbear like any particular like physical pleasures or passions at all. It's like, then why are we doing any of this?
And we turn this. If you think it is a tragedy. The movies are tragedies in more ways than one, but it is such a tragedy when you watch like this poor kid, right? It's like he has, even when he gets saved and he still has all this emotional stuff going on with his mom and all. They just left his freaking mom there. Cold
Didn't even care.
All that stuff is bad. He gets this one ray of hope. He falls in love, right? All this stuff. It has to be this deep, dark, dirty, secret thing, right? It has to be tainted by this thing. Like, it is masterful. Like, George Lucas, we'll give him super. He
just needed a better screenwriter. The ideas are there.
Well, he's a great world builder, and that's part of that world.
The plot work is fine.
It's great. It's a great mythological structure. The one thing this kid had that was pure, and which is actually pure, those kids could have a future, right? He could have been a healthy person if that got encouraged, and everybody, he has issues to go through because he has this power. But the only way to get, again, that's what we're saying. The only way for there to be balance if there is an acceptance of a medium in the middle, and not what happens is what happens. The Jedi, that doesn't work. They try one side, and then he gets seduced to the dark side. And that doesn't work for, you know what I mean? Like, he's not a healthy person there either, right?
Yeah.
And it's only till his son
I think the Jedi evil, like, well, you're lost. It's like, well, you only gave me those two options.
But it's only till he comes through and his son. That's the beautiful, profound thing of Star Wars and why it's such a, people don't say that and kids don't even realize that till you get older and really watch it again when you're a teenager. Like, oh, crap. Like, it's the most profound ending because his son is going to the dark side. He comes back. Only him right there at the edge, right at the intersection between both of those. He's basically a gray Jedi at that point, right? Luke is. Like, at that point, that's the only thing he goes, oh, this isn't so bad. He's not a bad person, and I'm accepted, and he's accepting me. Nobody's ever told him
we
that.
We can
it's
make
like
moral decisions based on the situation.
Right. It's like, oh, you don't have to just get pissed and go, it's like, oh, I've never had counseling. I've never, and he's so weary and tired and dying by that. He's like, oh, okay. Like, it's such a powerful transition. And so let's think about that. Like knowing all of this, right? And the idea that even like Daisy really said she won't, I really hope, and especially now they announced the new, Rian Johnson trilogy, all that stuff. I hope these 9 movies are it. Kind of. I'd be sad.
Yeah, for this particular saga. Yeah, I don't want you to keep the numbering going.
Let's pretend that's it. What is the final cap of this? Like, how does this resolve, do you think? Like, related to what happens in this movie?
The whole trilogy, not just this movie?
Because, well, this, if you think about it, but this is the act 2. So this is really going to set us forward and set us on a path. So we should know the direction of episode 9.
Yeah, because episode 9 should just be a wrap-up. Because this is the one that'll sort of define
it's the final battle, the final showdown, the final things happening, the final, So it's like, so this movie, so what do you think is that middle?
I kind of think we have to see Rey and Kylo get together on some plane here, like possibly romantic. I see that as a possibility. Okay. I don't see them being related to each other.
No,
that's not where I see them going with this. But definitely, I think we need to see a darker side of Rey and a lighter side of Kylo coming out here, and that's sort of Luke's argument. It's like, you got to, check it out. This isn't just Jedis versus Sith, good versus evil. There's people here, and you make decisions, and really it's coming together. I kind of, to me, it's all about the yin yang here. It's like at this point, you can say gray Jedi, but what we're really talking about is a peace between the Jedi and the Sith philosophy.
It's a Sith Jedi.
A reconciliation.
Right.
Sith.
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 Sith. That's not a strong.
Jedith.
Jedith.
Jedith. It's like, look, we can work out the nomenclature later, but still, I'm just saying we need to get together on philosophy first. And I think on a larger level, what he's saying there, what that would be a metaphor for, like, because in this movie, we would need to see some reconciliation between Kylo and Rey, but in the greater story, what this suggests is this trilogy should not end with a final battle between good guys and bad guys. Like, what we need is a peace between the First Order and the Resistance, because these are all just broken children of a war they weren't even part of. It's so tragic. Like General Hux, like he just had a horrible childhood coming up under Imperial propaganda and brought into the First Order. He doesn't have any real enmity towards the Republic. He doesn't know anything about them.
Again, God, man, damn millennials are going to be like, see, the prequels are genius.
Let them have it.
It's illustrated, again, not in execution and world buildingness by the prequels, because it started with the most pointless war. Like us again, like clones against robots. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. What a great image of a war.
Yeah, it's like they're literally cannon fodder to the most extreme. Nobody cares about any of those people. But then that caused, and literally it's orchestrated by Palpatine, right? And it's orchestrated by this thing to cause, he sets in forth this idea that they're always these broken children forever. And it's going to keep happening. And it perpetuated this, and it's moving into... And we see it so beautifully. I guess the idea of the original trilogy, it's like you get to see that rebel side of it start kind of dealing with it. But then it's like with Finn and all the stuff in this, and the next one, it's like cool because you go, oh, the other side's starting to deal with it. Kylo also as well. They're having to deal with this side of this brokenness too, and to like what their place in this is. Yeah,
because think of Hux. Like Hux wants to launch the Starkiller mostly because he has this idea of this terrible republic that he's never seen.
Right.
And the Starkiller gives them the opportunity to strike out against them and destroy the enemy without ever having a battle. He's never been to war. He's never fought a battle. So in his mind, that's the perfect thing.
And you can say how badass Kylo is, and he's great in the first one, and then Hux too. But we get to see them quibbling, so we know the tension there. We know they're not these confident. They're not Thrawn. By no means are they Thrawn at
neither
all.
One of them
right.
are. They're all different. Just children under this one entity that's driving them. This one bad influence that doesn't by itself seem to have any real power.
Thrawn to show up like, "What's up, children? You need help?"
Yeah,
it's like
I kind of like the idea that they're just finding a way to keep Thrawn out of it so that he could come out at any other point.
It'd be cool if he had a cool lore reason if they sent him off. That was the thing that he went off. That
he
was
went
in
into the unknown regions.
I know. So at least if he's not going to come now, they're going to kill him off there.
I have a feeling that the next major phase of their expanded canon will fill that gap between what happens after.
God, I hope the next animated series is literally Luke, Leia, and Han.
That would be so much fun.
That'd be so much fun. I'd watch every episode of that.
Well, Zahn's definitely got a new book coming out.
Oh, he's got, and it's basically
June.
him and Vader buddy cop, right?
Yeah, because that's what they set up in the Thrawn book. So
and that comes out in like May or something.
Yeah, so it's a little while yet, but so they've got a new Thrawn trilogy that's all about like Thrawn in between. It's sort of brilliantly paced so that like in between every movie, we'll have a big Thrawn book. So after episode 9, we can do absolutely anything because we'll have.
You could really do this thing where maybe he's the one that goes out there and awakens Snoke or something. You know what I mean, or whatever happens.
Well, I kind of feel like
a big part of that story in a way.
Something had to get Thrawn out of the way because at some point it becomes clear that the Imperial remnants are taken over by whatever Snoke is. And Thrawn must be out of the way by then because Thrawn would be.
But I like the idea that Thrawn, maybe because Thrawn went out there, Snoke is aware of this whole galaxy and this other thing going on over here. You know what I mean? Like
I've been saying, I think that Snoke is. Thrawn has been saying there's this evil that's threatening the Chiss ascendancy. I'm pretty sure that whatever Snoke is, it's that.
Oh, you're right, dude. That's exactly right. That's why
so definitely Thrawn would be out of the way because Thrawn's all about defeating that thing. He's not trying to make friends with it.
That's why he gets his friend to go back there and be an ambassador and all that stuff.
Yeah, so there's a whole other saga going on in the background there. Like, Timothy Zahn's going to have a huge amount to do with at least the expanded canon.
And they did mention that, like, somewhere in a character description, or maybe Andy Serkis, they said that he's watched the rise and fall of the rebellion, of the Empire. So he's been alive for hundreds of years, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, and he's seen. So he's been this observer off.
Whatever this thing is was sort of awakened at the same time that Rey was born. Whatever weird vergence in the Force that sort of bolstered the dark side by allowing the birth of not Rey, but I mean Anakin, not Rey.
Okay, yeah.
That's when this thing started.
He's been watching since then, because that's literally how the movie started. Yeah, they get pulled to this thing and they get pulled over there. And
then Rey is a different kind of vergence, but
they literally get pulled out of orbit and they have to go to the planet Tatooine to, you know. So yeah, and that's what that's cool. Yeah. I think that's very cool.
I covered a lot of this in detail in my book, The Myth Awakens, which is on Amazon.
$3 a piece. I'm actually going to buy it on there.
Theories.
You sent me the PDF. You were kind enough to send the PDF, but I like to watch it. And I like to do it on my Kindle, so I will buy it.
Oh, well, I should have sent you I could send you an ebook.
I don't know how to load that in there. It's easier for you to buy. It's like, I'm not one of them, although I do.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Was it Blue Fire, I think?
That's the way damn Andy Weir, the Martian, he just has that Artemis book now too. He became an international superstar because he just had a book on his website and he put it out in chapters, Charles Dickens style, right?
Huh.
And then people go, I want an ebook. No, he said, I want an ebook. And he's like, okay, here's the free EPUB. And like, I like it on my Kindle. And so then he's like, okay. He put it on there and it has to be like $1, right? At least, and maybe $3. Like, and he's like, and it's like a bestseller. And he didn't even mean it to go on there. And that's just what happened. I was like,
well,
okay.
That must be nice when that happens.
So that'll happen to you now.
Sure.
In the hours before the movie.
But, well, these will be out there. Like,